I want you all to just gather with us. It's going to be pretty cool. We're going to have a good time. Let me first say this. My name is Dacari Middlebrooks. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. Born and raised in Atlanta. Grew up in Atlanta. Went to Morehouse College in Atlanta. And I majored in mass communications, radio, television, and film. And when I left Morehouse, I came to Vanderbilt Divinity School, where I finished in 2010. In 2010, Bishop Walker hired me to be his first assistant. So I traveled the country with him for 3.5 years. And then I transitioned into a role where I oversaw a lot of ministries. And then from there, I took over Mount Zion Anywhere. So if any of y'all ever watch Mount Zion online, if you watch it on Facebook, you watch it in all these different places, I'm responsible for how you all watch it, okay? And shout out to our streaming audience if they're still on tonight. Let me tell you how this is gonna work. I'm gonna speak for about 15 to 17 minutes, and then I'll leave the last for discussion. Cool? But before I do that, guys, can you watch this video first?
Yeah, it's a moment that's special. That's what happens. Stay down, the game bless you. That's what happens. Don't fold, the game test you. If you pass it, you gone, they can't catch you. It's permanent. I've been down, I deserve it.
Nipsey, I want to first thank you for coming today. I do these interviews, which I call self-made.
I love the title.
Because to me, what I'm trying to do personally and in discussions with someone like yourself is reflect on the shit that you went through to get where you are. You and your story and where you've come from, you've done it yourself.
Right.
And I cheers to you.
Toast up.
Easy place to start. You're wearing it, Crenshaw.
Yes, sir.
What was it like growing up?
I lived in 3 houses growing up. My grandmother's house, my mom's house, and then my grandfather's in between those 3 houses. And my grandmother lived on Slauson and 5th Avenue. My grandfather lived on 60th and 10th Avenue, which is in the Crenshaw district. And my mom stayed on 60th and Rempar, which is in the Crenshaw district. You could ride your bike. So it was a dope place to grow up. It was like a really lit up place. Obviously, what we know about Crenshaw Boulevard in the 90s, it was like a car epicenter. So everybody in LA brought their cars to ride down Crenshaw on the weekend. Really felt like a community, a lot of entrepreneurial outside hustling going on, whether it's the dudes selling incense on the corner or Final Call, Nation of Islam, people standing on the corner selling bean pies.
Did you pick up on that entrepreneur atmosphere?
Yeah, later on, when I traveled outside of my area and I saw that was unique to where we grew up, just people going outside, setting up shop.
Doing what they have to do.
Yeah, 100%. You know what I mean? So I used to try to go get a job early when I first came into being a teenager. And when I started getting doors closed on me, I just was like, well, I'm gonna do like everybody else and I'm gonna pop my trunk. I saw examples of it in different categories and felt automatically when I got to the age of wanting to become self-made or support my own ambitions, you know that's the step.
What jobs did you have?
Bro, the first job I had, I shined shoes. I think I was 11, 12 years old. So there was a spot called Chamber Shoe Shine. And I just went in there, I'm like, look, I want to work, man. I'm young, you know, I come every day, I show up early, I need a job. And dude gave me a shot. And I was making like $90 a day. And I worked 6 days a week. And I was selling candy at the Shoe Shine spot also. Go to the 99-cent store, you get like $3, $4 candy bars. You sell them for $1, you triple up whatever you spend.
The guys at the shoe shop, they didn't mind it.
Nah, they encouraged it. They laughed at me because I was young, but they was like, dude got a hustler spirit and we gonna support it.
Did anybody tell you to go get a job or you wanted that?
I wanted to buy school clothes. My mom gave me $40 to go school shopping and I didn't want to make her feel bad and I knew that's all she had. And so I'm like, this is not gonna really cut it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My brother was a little bit older and it was more important for him to get school clothes. And so I understood that, but I'm like, you know, I don't want to put no pressure on you and make you feel bad about not being able to look out. The next summer, I'm like, I want to prevent going back to school without what I need.
Yeah. When did music kick in for you?
Before the 2000s, equipment was really expensive. So I could never afford to buy equipment or pay for studio time. So my mom, just knowing I had a passion, she found this community center at the Watts Towers and was like, you know, they offer a class once a week. It's like electronic music. I used to catch the bus to the train and go to the Watts Towers on Saturday and just learn. It was like a classical composer.
Yeah.
He taught us how to use an MPC, which is the beat machine,
Yeah.
a 16-track recorder. That was my first exposure to production.
Who were you listening to then?
Snoop Dogg, Tupac. Tupac was like one of my biggest inspirations growing up, me being from LA.
Yeah.
Biggie, you know, Eminem came in like 99, 98.
You remember hearing your first song on the radio?
Yep, I do remember that. It was a record called Bullets Ain't Got No Names. I had just got out of jail. I went through a struggle in a situation where I signed a record deal, and a week later, the police was looking for me, and I didn't even get to spend my check. I didn't get to cash my check. I was in jail for like 3 months fighting the case, and I got out. And as soon as I got out, we had a ton of music I had recorded prior. I had a team around me that had a good relationship with Felly Fell at Power 106. And he played Bullets Ain't Got No Names, probably like 2 weeks after I got out of jail. You sound different on the radio, and you know that 1 million people plus are hearing it. I was just like, man.
How old were you then?
I think I was 19.
Yeah. If you think back, did you have any big break?
A group of people that was helping me, management, they put me on a Tupac album. Before I had the resume to justify it. You know, and them people was by the name of Big U, Steve Lobel, LT Hutton. They just was like, you know, this young kid got a story, he's working, and you know, he's with us. They put me on the album, and I remember buying the physical CD, seeing Tupac featuring Nipsey Hussle on the back of it. That was huge for me. And then like we was talking about hearing my song on the radio, hearing it, the first record on Power 106, you know, from Felly Fell at the New at 2 and him putting the horns on it, and you know what I mean? And then me signing my first record deal. And
If an up-and-coming artist says, give me some advice.
My advice would be define who you are and what you are and be clear on that, meditate on that, and then live and die by it.
You have kids now, but when you look back on the stuff that you quote-unquote shouldn't have done, or the trouble you got into, would you have changed that?
There's things I would change, and the things I would change is the things that affected other people in a negative way. I don't feel like it's worth it, you know what I mean, to hurt people, or to like your actions to be so driven by ambition that they rub other people the wrong way. I would change those things. Anything else, nah, that's the testimony.
That's you.
That's what gave me my understanding, was that I can reflect in them moments of being confused.
Rick Ross wanted me to ask you a question.
Okay.
He looks at you and says, you are West Coast. You were the next generation of Crenshaw. You're giving back. His question is, what's the sense of responsibility to that?
Right. You can't break the rules, the fundamental rules. Be a man of your word. Do what you say you're gonna do. Respect people the way you would like to be respected. You know, my reach was the people that know me. So when you really think about it, who put me on? And those people.
Yeah.
You know, and they spent $5 with me. My sales pitch used to be, you know, if it's garbage, throw it out the window, bro. I know your lifestyle. Yeah. Cause it's my lifestyle. I'm speaking to your lifestyle. It's very concise what the content of this record is. But if it's garbage, toss it out the window. I just want $5. And people supported me when they didn't have a reason to, just based on, you know what, you a young person trying, and I'm gonna support the ambition.
Do you feel, I work with my brothers.
Right.
I work with 2 of my brothers, and I'm the youngest.
Me too.
Okay, so maybe you can appreciate the same thing. I feel a sense of responsibility.
Right.
Meaning, I need this to work for everyone else to benefit.
100%.
Do you feel that way?
Yep, I do. I mean, in terms of playing my role, because, you know, the overall operation, you know, obviously it's bigger than music now, and it's all real businesses that have employees and take administration and take everybody being committed. Definitely feel responsible. Yeah. Because everybody's committed to my dream.
Well, Nipsey, I will tell you this. I think 2005 was your first mixtape?
2007 was my first in the game mixtape, but yeah, 2005 was the first one.
So we'll say this is 12 years?
Yeah.
So let's go for another 12 years?
Absolutely.
I can't wait to look forward to the next. And to being self-made, you are the man.
Likewise.
So cheers.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.
Cause the mission was last time that I checked. It was 5 chains on my neck. It was no smut on my rep last time that I checked. I was selling zones in the set.
On March 31st, 2019, the artist known as Nipsey Hussle was gunned down in front of the store that he owned. The community in which he was raised, the city that birthed him, the place where he began to brand himself, was the place in which he was killed. It was his village. It was his village that brought him to a place of prominence. But it was also that same village that took his life. The theme or thesis of this symposium is what happened to our village? So I asked the question, what happened to our village? Thousands and thousands of years ago, Chip, there was another interesting man, a man who was born in a manger, which is a feeding box for animals. He grew up to do some miraculous things. He once said that a prophet is without honor in his own home, meaning the people in other places respect him and love him for his gift. But the people who knew him the most, they hated him for it. This guy was also raised in the village, grew up and became a man in the village, and was ultimately killed by the village. His name was Jesus. So again, I asked, what happened to our village? One, for the context of this discussion, I'm going to talk about the vision Nipsey had for the community and what Jesus envisioned for the church, and the two ideas and how the two ideas can bring us to a place of reconciliation for our village. So what happened to our village? Let's start with the church. Can I get this first slide? It's interesting. I read a memo from the CEO of Starbucks, and I thought it was fascinating for this discussion. He sent a memo to his employees and said this: over the past 10 years, in order to achieve the growth, development, and scale necessary to go from less than 1,000 stores to 13,000 stores and beyond, we have had to make a series of decisions that in retrospect have led to the watering down of the Starbucks experience. Somebody say that with me. Have led to the watering down and what some might call the commoditization of our brand. Go to the next one for me. This is what I love about leadership. The CEO says, I take full responsibility myself, but we desperately need to look into the mirror and realize it's time to get back to the core and make the changes necessary to evoke the heritage, the tradition, and the passion that we all have for the true Starbucks experience. While the current state of affairs, for the most part, is self-induced, somebody say self-induced, that has led to competitors of all kinds, small and large coffee companies, fast food operators, and mom and pops to position themselves in a way that creates awareness, trial, and loyalty of people who previously have been Starbucks customers. This must be eradicated. But here's the part that makes the most sense for this. Next one. I have said for 20 years that our success is not an entitlement, and now it's proven to be a reality. Let's be smarter about how we are spending our time, money, and resources. Let's get back to the core. So, in a real sense, what the Starbucks CEO is saying, and how I think it's applicable for the church, is this: we've gotten bigger, and everybody knows us, but it's led to the watering down of who we are. So, what happened to our village? We'll begin with the church. The church. And for the context, I'm going to deal with the African American church. The very first place where African Americans had power. This was the place where Monday through Friday you could be a street sweeper and nothing's wrong with that. But on Sunday you became the trustee or the superintendent of a board, and you exerted your power to oppress more people. The African American church, the very first place where many of us discovered our gifts. We sung in the choir, we did Easter speeches, we learned how to speak. The very place where we discovered our gifts was the same place that suffocated our gifts. The church, we made the pulpit powerful and the pew powerless. We helped and created a lifestyle for the clergymen and women, yet we left those places broken. We named it, we claimed it, we believed it, we received it, maybe, but it didn't work out. We fell more in love with social media, Chip, than we did social justice. The church. We bought our pastors nice cars and Cadillacs, but we left the church with only our shoes. We became a church community where if you were called to preach, you got an armor bearer before you got a Bible. And you got earpieces before you even heard from God. We said, keep politics out of the pulpit, but we didn't keep it away from those who wanted to become elders and bishops and those who occupied the best seats in the house. Because let's be clear, that's all political. We became self-centered on what to wear and how you look. Ladies and gentlemen, we built the images. That's why it's difficult for us to imagine anything else. We packed out sanctuaries and had amazing conferences. We fell out, we shouted, we danced. But Ashford, we lost our marriages. We lost our children, our homes, and some of us almost ourselves. We became elders, ministers, deacons, bishops, apostles, but we forgot who we were. So you ask, what happened to our village? Nah, our village happened to us. What happened to our community? Let's start with generations. Baby boomers, a great generation, an amazing generation. My mom's a baby boomer. But that generation passed down what they knew and not what they owned. So we have a new generation climbing a ladder that's ever evolving with no end. Baby boomers. What about Generation X? The generation that graduated from great institutions, got amazing jobs, good jobs. But this was the generation that moved away from their communities that shaped them. They moved to Buckhead in Atlanta or Brentwood in Tennessee. Their idea of success was a big house in a big community, hanging out at the best spas, sipping champagne when they're thirsty, enjoying the fruits of their labor while the generation coming behind them were declining. I'm not hating, I'm just stating the facts. It's difficult for that generation to embrace a Nipsey when they're tipsy off their own success. Thank you, Nip, for this. You can't cover up the pain with fake progress. Now, millennials, the generation that's deemed entitled or lazy, but where did it come from? We were told to go to school, get an education, come out and get a good job, so we too can achieve that level of success from the previous generation. Yet, this happened. We grew up in the bosom of hip hop, but we were raised by prosperity gospel. Everything about our generation was bling bling and you can have it. And so you can't blame us for wanting it fast when y'all told us we could. What happened to our village? We made our pastors God. And we made everything individualistic and no longer communal. That's why when we come to church, we say, I'm getting mine. You better get yours. But our generation, we embrace what Jay-Z said. He said, I got rich. He said, I can't help the poor if I'm one of them, so I got rich to give back. To me, that's a win-win. So again, you ask what happened to our village? Nah, man, our village happened to us. On March 31st, 2019, a guy that was raised by his village was killed by his village. AP, we embrace this ideology of the hood, but it comes from the word neighborhood. And the root word of neighborhood is neighbor, which means you can't have the hood without your neighbor. Neighborhood Nip, a guy that was embracing his neighborhood, but was killed by the hood. The question I ask, if we're going to change and reconcile our village, if you're not my neighbor, why are you even repping the hood? Our Christian faith could be summed up in one sentence. To love God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your what? As yourself. But it's difficult, guys, to love your neighbor as yourself when you don't even love you. So, as I'm wrapping up, I want to give you some information that Nip told me to share with you all. This is how we can reconcile our community. Number one, can you give me that? Control your time. Nip said, on a mission, your worst enemy is idle time. What are you doing with your time? Those who control your time control your destiny. Where are you spending your time? What are you doing? Number two, create a plan and then attack like a raging pit bull. Nip said, I took my wildest dreams, then mapped them out. I go for mine like it's overtime. Me and my dogs had to struggle, so we overshine. Do you have a plan? Do you have a plan? I had an opportunity, guys, to sit with a group of pastors, African-American pastors. And there was a mayor of a particular city, and I was able to sit in a meeting, and the mayor said, I'm leaving out. And he said, but I want to do something special for your community. So the pastors, they huddled up. This is a true story. And I'm sitting in the back, and I'm watching all this unfold. And they huddled up, and they came back, and the mayor said, I'll give you anything you want. This is sincere. He said, I'll give you anything you want. I know you all are trying to revitalize communities, etc. And this group of pastors said, one of them yelled out, we just want a community center. And to me in the back, I said, a what? Community center. It's amazing that when the resources show up, you got to know what you want. If we had a plan, we could have bought the block. If we had a plan, we could have bought the block. But we didn't know what we want. Know what you want. Have a plan. When they ask you what you want, have a plan, not an idea. The third one, this is my favorite. Nip said, grow comfortable with not getting recognized. The challenge with our community is anytime we want to do something dope, do something creative, we got to figure out who's going to get the credit. Who names on it? Who's on the flyer? You cannot reconcile a village if you're looking for recognition, because Nip said this, and I love it. He said, to be great, you must be willing to accept, this is my favorite thing, several quiet seasons. Several quiet seasons. There will be times where people don't see your vision. There will be times where people aren't fans of your work. It's up to you to keep in mind that there's a bigger picture. Stay ahead of the game. And then my favorite part, Nip said, let everyone else catch up when it's time. This is my other one. If you're not willing to reach back and give the game to young hustlers, that's a sin. If you're not willing to reach back and give to the generation after you, why are you here? What good is it for you to have all the information, all the knowledge, and not share it with the next generation? Why are you here? Nip said, no one can show you how to unlock your potential like those who have run the same marathon you running. Yet those people came in first place. So why are you cool with me coming in third? How do you reconcile the village? Make sure you're giving game back to the next generation. Number 5, never stop learning. Nip was always reading a book. Nip said, read books, take notes, and connect with genuine people. And this is my piece I'm throwing in there. We just got to stop hanging around goofy people. Like, for real, goofy people that's not going where you're going, people that don't want you to have nothing, they ain't never had nothing. We got to stop hanging around with them and stop hanging around people that don't tell the truth. There's a lot of people telling the truth. We tell lies in church. We tell lies at home. We got to just stop. Y'all with me? The next one. It's a marathon. Obviously. I'm about seeing the long term, seeing a vision, understanding nothing worthwhile happens overnight, and just sticking to your script long enough to make something real happen. This is the last one. Remember the community that built you. Remember the community that built you. Nipsey found success, but he never left that neighborhood behind. He never left his neighborhood. The same parking lot where he started selling CDs out of, he bought. But it was also the same parking lot where he was killed. He invested in this thing called Vector 90, where it was a co-working space. We got co-working spaces here in Nashville, the lab. Do we support the things that exist in our own neighborhood? So again, I asked, what happened to our village? I tell you this, and I'm about wrapping up. There's a sociologist by the name of Sandra Barnes and a theologian, I can't remember his name, but they got together and they came up with this idea called the calling in the corner. And it was interesting because the calling would suggest this. Dacari, I know who I'm called to. I'm called to young professionals, millennials. That's my generation. I'm called to that group. I know that's my anointing. So if you ever hear me speak and you want high church, which means there's gonna be a lot of shouting, a lot of dancing, falling out, I'm not your guy. But I'm a guy that's about empowerment. I'm ratchet. I love entertainment, hip hop. That's me all day. I'm going to give you that. That's who I am. I know my calling. However, there's a corner that they discovered. Although your calling may be that, you can end up on a corner that doesn't support your calling. What has happened in our churches is that many of our leaders are called to certain things, but they dummy down their calling to fit a corner and reshape a narrative that fits them. In order to revitalize the community, we got to remember why we're called. Why we're called and what we're called to. The greatest threat to humanity, the greatest threat to your existence today is being faithful to the wrong assignment. Waking up every day, doing something you don't love doing, being in relationships with people you're not supposed to be in a relationship with, showing up to places you're not supposed to. Wrong assignments kill dreams. So, what happened to our village? We left the community of corner stores and crates to become a part of a community where they still see you as 3/5 of a person. What happened to our village? The preachers stopped studying and the people stopped listening. What happened to our village? We killed Batman and we let the jokers run the city. What happened to our village? We won't embrace the Nipsey because we're still tipsy off our own success. What I do know is this. If the marathon is to continue, we must understand this. You can't lead the people if you don't love the people. And you can't save the people if you don't serve the people. God bless y'all.
Amen. Amen. Wow. So wonderful, wonderful way to bridge culture and faith, because these are things that affect us. These are things that we know when this event happened, it affected a lot of the youth. And so, of course, because of how it affected them, a lot of people start saying, who is this person? Who is this person? It's really important that we understand more deeply than to just categorize people. That's just a rapper. That's just this person. Sometimes people are drawn to them for the things that they represent and what they stand for. And so a part of what we talk about these exclusionary practices is tackling those biases that we're having if we're just writing people off. I'm so grateful to learn more about Nipsey Hussle and the things that he had done and what he had done for the community out in Los Angeles and how that's affected worldwide. So next up, and thank you, Elder Dacari. Next up, we're going to have our Faith Without Works panel. I am super excited about this panel. Amazing moderator with Odessa Kelly. We're going to have our panelists, Charlene Oliver, Minister Jessica Johnson, also Ashford Hughes. And so we're just going to do a quick little setup, and we're going to get started. So y'all stay put. Y'all got the good seats in here because you got the double for your trouble with both panels, or both breakouts, if you will. But if you will, I'm going to have the panel come and join me up here, and they'll have the seating set up, and we're going to dive right into it. Faith without works, y'all. We cannot continue to I'm going to just pray about it. We have to do something about it. And so our faith is actionable, amen? Amen. We don't have a faith that just sits back. So they're going to get at the ways in which our faith has actionable items to it, and they're going to work it out. So if you will, let's receive them with an amen. All right.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Odessa Kelly. I'm a member here of the church. I've been a member for a long, long time. Also a member of the Psalm Ministry here. Also the Mount Zion representative for NOAH, which the church is a part of, which is Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, and also the co-chair for Stand Up Nashville.
Hi, my name is Jessica Johnson. I'm a minister here at Mount Zion, and I work in public service. Good evening. My name is Charlene Oliver. I'm also a member of Mount Zion. Participate on the Mount Zion softball team. If y'all didn't know, we were champions last year. Also have been a writer for the Trumpet magazine and very active with my kids. By day, I work for Congressman Jim Cooper. He is the U.S. Congressman for Davidson County. I'm one of his community liaisons. And by night, I work my other full-time job, which I am the co-founder of the Equity Alliance. We are a 501c3 nonprofit focused on civic engagement in communities of color, particularly African Americans, to make sure that we are using our voting power as a weapon in the fight for social justice.
Good evening. My name is Ashford Hughes Sr. I'm a long-standing member of Mount Zion. I serve on the Psalms Ministry with Odessa. Currently, I work in the mayor's office. I am the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the city.
All right, we're going to just go ahead and dive into this and respect for time so we can have a real good, candid conversation. So this is for everyone on the panel. James 2:26 declares, "For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so is faith without works. It is also dead." What does faith without works look like today in our postmodern times?
I'll start off this one. So for me, it's about being actionless. And right now, in my world, we talk about equity all the time. That's a buzzword, right? Equity is a noun, but without action towards being equitable, then we're just talking. So within our faith, we see that there was a man at the pool of Bethesda that was there for 38 years, that was just sitting there, right? He had faith that if he was able to get in the pool, that he would be healed. But he never moved and he never did anything, the action step, until Jesus told him to get up and get your butt in the pool if you want to be healed. So the same thing that we are at right now. We are a lot of talking. We just heard about being social media. Everybody wants the clicks. Everybody wants the likes on there. But as a faith community, as a community, we are not moving towards action. And for me, my faith tells me that I have to be about action. I have to move beyond just a conversation, that I must move towards results. And I must do, and I must be about that. And if not, our community is just going to be at a standstill because we aren't overcoming some of the things we need to be moving forward with.
Yeah, when I think about faith without works, I think about, we're not working towards something. We're, when in the context of civic responsibility, we are 50th in the country as a state in voter turnout. So that means we aren't doing something. We aren't voting. We're not using that voice. So in the context of civic responsibility, I want to clarify a few things. Having access to the ballot, that's a right. Actually going out to go vote, that's your duty. But to actually be engaged, to be informed, to know which candidate you're voting for, and to hold that candidate accountable when they actually get elected, that's our responsibility. And that third piece is what we're not quite doing well. So when we get back to the action of faith without works, we need to be actually engaging in our communities and engaging in our government.
I think for me, I think about basically where is Jesus today? Like, how is it that I can demonstrate Jesus in my everyday life? And Jesus was about to be stoned. And he basically said, if you don't see me doing the work of my Father, don't believe a word that I say. And I think that that's where we are today. We have to demonstrate the works of the Father in order to make that faith actualized in our everyday lives.
So about 5 years ago, I got promoted and started working. My day job, I work for Parks and Recreation. So I work at a community center, while Dacari over there talking about community centers. I work at Napier, which is one of the most impoverished neighborhoods in Nashville, in South Nashville. One of the kids there who I fell in love with, right, he got killed, right? So here I am. At this point, I'm a member of NOAA, and I'm part of the Criminal Justice Task Force, because I think we all know the criminal justice issues that hit us all, but especially in the African-American community. Well, I'm also know the kid who shot the kid who got killed. So here I am following them through court. And as this kid starts to talk about some of the issues, one of the reasons why he was out here in these streets is because he takes care of his 6 younger brothers and sisters. And the reason he was out here trying to do things in the street is because he wanted to alleviate some of the burden on his mother so she could be at home. His mother is working 35 hours a week and can't make ends meet, which means she has a second job. At that point, I realized is that, yes, criminal justice is an issue, but the bigger barrier is the systemic policies and oppression that we are put under. So I started taking over the Economic Equity and Jobs Task Force, where we could really try to make an impact. That was the experience that changed my life. Was there a particular experience that changed all of you guys' lives and put you in the work that you do now?
So for me, I'm originally from Knoxville, Tennessee, oldest of 2 kids, single parent. I came to TSU in '97 to play basketball and to be a business marketing major. I came to school, I wanted to make a lot of money. Grew up in an area just like Nipsey, the same type of community. My beginning of my sophomore year, my best friend was killed. He and a group of friends, we all hung out in the same area, the same alley. One night, some guys came and tried to rob him. He ran one way, the other guys ran the other way, and he was killed, unfortunately. Several months after that, I had another friend who was killed on someone's porch, arguing with another young man over a young lady. So within about 6 to 8 months, I had 2 close friends that I had grown up with since middle school and before that were killed. At the same time, that summer, my mom and grandmother kind of looking at me like, what's next for you? Are you going to go down that same path? Even though I'm at Tennessee State, but I still had close connection with my friends because we had grown up together for so long. So there was a clicking point in my mind that I had to make a change. I wanted to be really heavily involved in the process and be connected with people of power so that individual young men that looked like me weren't ending up dead or in jail. So that following semester, I came back to school and changed my major from business marketing to political science and started getting involved in the Africana Studies classes. And I have a minor in Africana Studies because I really wanted to understand and have better knowledge of self, but also to be connected with those policymakers that were making policies in my community that had us where we were 17, 16 years old, hanging out in the middle of the night in alleys, doing God knows whatever. and not leading to positive outcomes. That really was a reflection on I needed to make a change in my life for my community, and that set me on a traction to be involved in politics and community organizing and labor organizing, church organizing since 1999.
Yeah, just a little bit about myself. Grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, single parent home, similar story, and, saw a mother who was raising 3 girls, no income, on food stamps, and just making it hard to make it. She had to, again, work, like Odessa said, she was going to school at night, working full time, and really hustling, and, left her daughters to, get into everything, at night. So, we struggled. And so through that lens, I saw a need for fairness and really in fighting for people. But really what made me start the Equity Alliance was the tragedy of Trayvon Martin. That was the spark for me, because it happened 2 days after my son was born. And that hit home for me as a mom that, I saw my son in Trayvon Martin. That could happen to anybody's mom, anybody's son. So for me, I questioned the political system and the policies behind how does it happen where this 17-year-old boy did nothing wrong and his killer walks free. And our criminal justice system does nothing about it, and there is no one to be held accountable. And then I looked at the Flint water crisis that happened shortly after that, and a governor that knew that he was poisoning his citizens, and he was not held accountable for that. And so again, I drilled that down into the policies that allowed that to happen, and then I drilled that down even more, and who makes these policies? It's the candidates, it's the elected officials. And who votes for these people? It's us. So I drilled that down to the vote. And so that's why we are so focused on making sure that people vote, but not only vote, but also use that voice to hold people accountable.
I think my experience is just a little bit less colorful. I needed a job, and I found a good government job. Now, my parents, I grew up in Gallatin, Tennessee. I was born in Natchez, Mississippi, but my mom worked at Walmart. She was a greeter, and my father worked in the factory, tire factory, and then the wire plant. And so I realized that, number one, I needed to actually invest myself into understanding what it meant to take what they had given me and actually make a change for my own life, right? So as I grew and awakened to the fact that what we were doing at the department I work with, I'm the senior financial policy advisor at the Department of Economic and Community Development for the state of Tennessee. So when I awakened to the fact that having a good, high quality job is the first step towards economic justice, I realized that, I can make a difference. They are making decisions that can affect people in their everyday lives. And when my parents had time without work, how did that affect my family? How did that affect my ability to go to class and actually pay attention? And so I understood the fact that every day when I wake up, I contribute to the fact that somebody somewhere in our state is gonna have a high quality job. And I think that mission behind that work really did ignite a deeper sense of responsibility there.
What has already been done to set a good foundation in having success in social justice? And where are the gaps? Let's talk freely. Y'all want to hear freely about the gaps too, where we see them? Let's talk about that.
Well, I think the foundation is what Charlene and the Equity Alliance are doing right now. You have to give mad props to a group of, got to give them mad props for winning a school board race with Miss Bugs in East Nashville and being equipped to say, if we can do this at the school board, then we need to continue on, right? So I think we have to start with those in our community, those within our church, right, as the foundation. I think we have other things that are taking place within our community that serve as a foundation. We have this church, our faith community. We are rooted and steeped in our grandmother's old time religion, right? We just need to get back to those basics of understanding and being in a strong relationship with God and understanding where he wants us to be within this social justice realm, and understanding what does it mean when we say social justice and how that is equivalent throughout all of our lives, not just focusing on the election day, as we have an election tomorrow, go vote, but also understanding that social justice means access to affordable housing. It means economic empowerment in our communities. We have a foundation of leaders already. What we need to do is to continue to lift these individuals up, lift Charlene up. We need to lift these organizations that are doing the work in our community and spend time there. As we just heard about Nipsey, we need to get back to spending time in the right places. I don't remember the scripture verse off the top of my head, but when Jesus was passing Simon Peter and his brother, and he said, throw down your nets and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. We need to get back to understanding what that really means. And we are right now, we have a foundation, but we're doing the right work in the wrong places. And to be fishers of men, which is a larger context of getting us in the right place, we just need to get back to the basics.
I've talked to a lot of people around the neighborhood, especially as we're getting closer to the elections, and within the church. And when I start asking about who are they voting for or what's their opinion on some of the issues out here, unfortunately, I get the response is, oh, I don't get into those things. I just go with God. So with that in mind, it's just a reality how a lot of people, they use religion to shield what I think is their civic responsibility. Is why is it important to understand the intersectionality of faith and social justice?
Yeah, when I think about the intersectionality of faith and justice, the scripture that comes to mind is Matthew chapter 25. And in that chapter, he talks about the least of these and how when I was in prison, did you come and visit me? When I was hungry, did you give me food? You know, those things that we have to get back to is caring for the least of these, caring for the people. You know, Jesus, God has taken people in the Bible like Job, and he's taken broken people, as an example to use as his warriors for justice. We cannot divorce faith from justice, because Christianity in itself, when we talk about love thy neighbor, is at the very core of justice.
And I think, just to add to Charlene, it's hard for me to imagine a Jesus that requires us to separate our context from our faith. Like, in many ways, and every time Jesus was approached by somebody that needed something, he addressed the need and then was able to have fertile ground for, the soul. So he addressed the physical need. So to me, he was here for the oppressed. He was here for the marginalized. He was here to give, a voice to the voiceless. And so when we understand the fact that faith and justice they have this interesting interdependency, and I think in many ways it's easier for us to have, it's easier for us to invest ourselves in understanding that we need to be looking out for the kids that are in cages at the border, or feeding the hungry, or visiting those who are in prison.
What areas of faith do we exclude social justice from? Here, I'll start it off. I can see that, give y'all time to think about it. I think that criminal justice is a very easy pickup, right? I think it's easy for people to talk about, but I think it's a surface issue. And the reason why I say it's a surface issue, because there are systemic issues that are buried under that cause the criminal justice issue that is the product that happens of a lot of policies and things that are passed. But I don't see in a lot of churches where we talk about it at the root of the problem and get to it. I see a lot of people that want to go out and we want to kumbaya, but is that really getting to it if the issue is getting caused by people who are sitting in offices who are setting policies and practices that keep us oppressed? which then turn and keep us in concentrated poverty, and we all know the ills that leads to.
I think sometimes the 501c3 status, or sometimes the threat to black churches to not go but so far because of the 501c3 status, kind of has allowed us to limit that voice that started in the church, where the civil rights movement started within the church. I think now, from my perspective, the church, a lot of churches, you hear the prosperity gospel of individual prosperity and blessings. I don't hear us necessarily having a larger collective black economic message, an economic message of starting your own business. As Dacari talked about, buying the block back. How do we have that message coming from the church? We tend to shy away from that. Thank you. We tend to shy away from having those conversations about, even within our own church, around race, around systematic racism, about politics and sexism within the church sometimes, right? So I think we are at a point in time right now that I think everybody can feel. There's a lot of tension in the air because of some of our federal politics, but even because of some of the local politics, that we really need to begin to reestablish and address. How do we find voice beyond just saying the church is just here to save souls? There's a lot of other areas that we need saving in. People need a place to live. People need a quality job that's going to pay them benefits and wages, right? So I think we have a responsibility now to look forward and to really be a voice for the people in the community.
I think sometimes we get caught up a lot in building more monuments than we are like investing in movements. And I think the more we can invest in a movement to basically build a person, and then build a collective, like the collective is a cohesive group of people in and of themselves that are empowered individually but contribute to a collective force, right? And so I feel like if we were to invest more in building that individual to understand what it means to be independently financially able, then that individual will contribute to a collective that in many ways has the power to move we as a people forward in a collective sense. So I think if we kind of focused a little more on movements than monuments, then we probably move us forward a little faster.
Okay, here, this next question, we gotta get, deep down into it and get real a little bit. What are the things that we need to wake up from and wake up to?
We are asleep at the wheel when it comes to politics. I hate to hear when people say, I don't do politics. I'm not involved in politics. We can't afford not to be in politics as a people. We are at the bottom of every social indicator in this country: healthcare, education, wealth and accumulation, housing, home ownership. We are at the bottom as a people, and we cannot afford to not be paying attention to what's going on. And what's going on right now is our democracy is under attack. If there even is a democracy anymore, because they are attacking our voting rights, they are attacking women and reproductive rights. We're attacking immigrants and Muslims right now. We're attacking, we're calling Baltimore an rat-infested city. What is that? We can't afford to not be paying attention. We need to be reading right now. There's a joke that black people don't read. Put it in a meme, unfortunately, and we'll pay attention. That's unfortunate. We need to be turning on the news, and I'm not talking about local news because that's triggering. I'm talking about we need to be reading the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and we need to be subscribing to NPR and turning on 90.3. I listen to 90.3 in the morning. That's NPR. That's giving me the news of the day. We need to be reading books. Pull that book out you had, Ash, for earlier. We need to be reading leadership books. I'm guilty of that. I need to read more, but unfortunately I got 3 kids. So we need to get back to paying attention. We need to wake up and show up. Show up at the Metro Council meetings. Show up at your child's school PTO meetings. Show up, because right now they're taking advantage of our vote because we don't show up. They don't knock on your door because we don't vote. They only go to the people who vote. When I say they, the candidates who want your vote, they go only to the ones that vote. So if you're not even in the game, like, we can't fight. So let's make sure that we're paying attention to what's going on, not only nationally, but locally as well.
Two points for me. One, you know, I joke sometimes, but I'm serious. I want us to wake up from being everybody's woke. I know it's a t-shirt and everybody's woke now, but that doesn't mean that you're knowledgeable or that you're factual in what you're being woke about, right? So I think we need to get woke and understanding that, and I'ma always push collective economics, right? We can talk all this stuff. We are not at the table when it comes to cooperative economics. We are not at the table when it comes to how are we buying land in our own communities where we don't have to worry about renting from someone else. Like, we need to be woke and be financially empowered in order to own and control our own communities, own and control our own schools. The second piece, which is really, really important to me, is that I want the men in our community to be woke. I think I've experienced it going to different events with the Equity Alliance, just being involved in politics around town, being involved in different community groups, with being one of the first founders working with Noah. Black men are not present, and that's just a fact. We need to be more woke as black men, to be more present and supportive of our women who are leading these efforts, present and being more active and engaged in schools. We have black men that are active, but comparing to other communities, comparing to the black women, we are not there. We have a spiritual, we have a collective responsibility as black men to be present, especially in this time. And I want us to be present in the areas that are really specific about growing and enhancing our communities, just as we are about being present in the next couple of weeks when it's fantasy draft time and in other areas in the community. And that is going to be vital for us moving forward in the black community and in the black church.
I think the only two things I would add was we need to wake up out of apathy and just the belief that we can't make a difference, both on the individual level and as the church. And then the second thing would be we need to reawaken this generational awareness and consciousness. I know that like we said earlier, like, we were here because our grandmothers and our mothers were, fighting for us, and they understood that they may not see the realization of the thing that they were hoping for, but maybe one day their children would. And the question is, for our children, what exactly are we leaving them? Like, what exactly are we thinking about that is not in the now, but in the next? And what are we doing to invest ourselves into ensuring that tomorrow is better for them than it is today?
So I have a question for the panel. I know me and Charlene have talked about this via Facebook before, and I'm always yelling at Ashford just because of his position about stuff he ain't got nothing to do with. So he's used to it too. So Jessica, you can hop in too. The black community here in Nashville, are we divided? Is it a socioeconomic divide? Why is there a divide? Why is it so hard to, as we use the word, bring it into one community? And what role can the church play in? And let me ask you this part of the question too. Is the church helping create that divide, or is it bringing it together, bringing these two communities together?
We ain't got enough time to talk about this.
You went off script. No. I would stab first. Because it's easy for us to be critical, but the question is, we are the community. So if we're divided, then we need to find a way not to be divided. Because when we say the black community here in Nashville, we're the black community. So, we need to join forces, and we need to do a better job of supporting one another. I think it's easy for us to always say they don't do. And I think we just need to step up and realize the call for the us and we. and perhaps we can move something forward. There's no doubt. I mean, the evidence is in something like the Equity Alliance that basically has no budget and has moved the nation. Like, you were in the Washington Post last month, right? Like, has moved the nation. And politically, usually they say, as the South goes, so does the nation. And really, if we look at the stats, as Tennessee goes, so does the South go. So we're sitting at in a great place. The question is, are we, I'm sorry, Ashford, are we woke to the fact of that we have the power and we're just sitting on it and not doing anything with it?
I don't know if I'm as optimistic as you are. But I will say, are we divided? Is Black Nashville divided? I would say no, because we're asking the question. So that's a good thing. That's a good start. I don't think we are divided. I think we just maybe disagree on the how. Like, we all want the same thing. We always been talking about, what's the Black agenda? What's the Black agenda? So at least we know we need one, right? So we're united in that front. Where I think we get in trouble is this scarcity of resources, and we're trying to jockey in who's going to be at the front of the line, who's going to be the spokesperson. I didn't appoint you to be the spokesperson. Where did you come from? Who's going to get the credit? We need to stop that. Like, Jesus is the ultimate example. He gave his life for all of us. And so we need to take a page from the Bible and Jesus and not be about self all the time. And the Bible talks about that, talked about deeds and, not being so boisterous about what we're doing. Go quietly. So making sure that we are all collectively doing our part, because we all have a part to play in the movement. Like I said earlier, we all can't be, the Justin Jones of the world and be on the front lines getting arrested at the state capitol. Some of us got to go to work. But some of us are going to work to earn a paycheck, and we can be funding the movement, okay? We can be bailing Justin out of jail. We can be, supporting our businesses. We can be getting our own money right so we can own homes, and we can do those things. So we all have a part to play. But I don't think Nashville is divided, but I do think we lack a middle class here to be able to elevate ourselves into that level to compete with other communities.
I mean, in the piggyback of what Charlene is saying as far as the church goes, like, there's this whole concept of the court prophet and the wilderness prophet. And so we need to understand that there is room for both. Like, I think so often the court prophet is pointing at the wilderness prophet for being so loud and boisterous, and the wilderness prophet is pointing at the court prophet and saying, you're not doing anything out there. You're not in the streets with us. And the question is, what do we need when? And we need both at certain points. And the answer too is, like, will we be able to strategize around understanding that both elements are necessary for us to survive and to thrive?
So I think that the church can play a major role. I wouldn't say that the Black community here is divided. I believe, like Charlene said, we have different tactics and people are really trying to figure it out as we go right now. I do believe systematic oppression and systematic policy has done away with a lot of our communal spaces because of redlining, because of urban renewal. Right now in Nashville, we don't have many communal places to go to. Where do we go as a Black community if we just want to have a lounge and after work, after 5, and go and talk and mingle and just be in the company or presence of others? Where is a Black 4-star, whatnot restaurant we can go in and eat and just be within community? We don't have those spaces. And as we talked about with Nipsey, a lot of us were taught, like, go to school, get these jobs, move out of the neighborhood so you can be in a safe environment, going to good school. So we all don't live in North Nashville proper anymore, like before when the interstate came through. I live in Donaldson. Some people live in Hermitage. We have folks in Bellevue. So if we don't have communal spaces that we can come together, socialize, build networks with, then it's hard for us to really maintain always on one simple accord. But I think the church, we have a plethora of Black churches in Nashville. And many of them in North Nashville own a lot of land, and nothing is happening with that land, and they're kind of holding on to it. if we can get back to building communal spaces for Black and brown people, then we have more area to go and build and connect with each other that is a safe space, that we can become emotionally and intellectually connected with each other once again. We don't really have those places right now, and that in any community, when you don't have communal places to go and to network, to devise strategy, then it's gonna be a fiefdom here, a fiefdom there, a Black agenda here. We need those communal spaces back in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm going off script again. Well, here's another question to piggyback off of that. Has the church talked about the devastation that gentrification has caused on Black Nashville enough? Why are you breathing, Charlene? You know it's a true question. Everyone out here is feeling the effects. We've been pushed out to the outskirts of the city. Like Black Nashville to me is Antioch now. I like Antioch, but I don't want to move in Antioch.
So this is where me and Odessa, we go back and forth. So quick point of reference. Before Odessa was the Economic and Community Development Chair with Noah, I served in that role, and I really was like, Odessa, I need you to really come in and be engaged in this because I see it in you, right? So like someone said earlier, you got to pour into people that you see. So Odessa was that person. But I think gentrification, we really need to define what we mean by that now. Gentrification of the 60s and 70s was policy driven from the government. Now, it's just as detrimental, but it is market-based and market-driven, right? Right now, because of our state legislature, we can't have rent-controlled properties in the city. That is up for private development. There are other tools that we can use, but I go back to economic empowerment. If we own and control the land, if we own and control and build and develop our communities, we don't have to worry about getting pushed out of the community. Now, urban renewal was probably just as bad as any type of policy, any type of program that was placed on to Black people, that we have a strong history of the destruction that urban renewal did across the country. I can't say today I know what that answer is right now, but I'm gonna continue to push the church to get more heavily involved in showcasing and speaking about Black business ownership, getting involved with getting people educated in workforce development for those tech jobs, for those jobs of the future that will pay living wages. We have a responsibility, and I'm teaching my sons to be owners and not just workers for someone else.
And this is for everyone on the panel. What is a good charge to lead a church with for social action and the civic responsibility?
I think we've already said it. I mean, find that gift that you have. The gifts will make room for you. And tap into that and find how you can be helpful, whether that's in the church or in the community. But get active. Just do something. Vote. You know, I'm always about voting. So tomorrow is an election. The leadership of the city is going to look totally different by tomorrow night. We're going to have a new mayor, a new vice mayor, a totally new 40-member city council. So it's really important that we go out and vote tomorrow. We put together the Equity Alliance. We put together the Nashville Voter Guide. And we saw a need for voter education in this community because our city doesn't do it. They don't put together a voter guide to tell you who you need to vote for. So we do all the homework for you. It has candidate profiles in there. It has what they look like, where they went to school, what their platform is. It tells you what places you can go to go vote. It has the new voting machine information that's on the ballot tomorrow. So, you know, this is a useful guide. You can go to NashvilleVoterGuide.com to actually download the digital version of this, but there are hard copies in the vestibule if you will take one tonight.
I think a charge for me for the church is to pour into leadership like Charlene, like the young women to my left right here, pour into more leadership development within the church. Everybody has a talent, and everybody knows the parable of the man with 5 talents, the man with 3 talents, and the one with 1 that held his, and Jesus punished him. Pour into leadership development within the church of our young people especially. Pour into those that have a role or playing their role right now but need more support, spiritual support, more resource support, and just more leadership development support. I think if we pour in as a church into all the talent that we have within this church, we can really grow an inclusive community, but also continue to grow that spirit of church, faith, and family again. I think the church should continue to put a charge on black men within the church, to continue to be more confident in self, to continue to show up and be supportive of our sisters, to be supportive of things that are taking place in our community. We have a responsibility, and I think the church is a right place right now because people are looking where to go to find support. Where can I go to be acknowledged as someone that is valuable? And I think we can start doing that now.
And I run the risk of sounding hyper spiritual or spooky or whatever, but I mean, simply be Jesus in the earth. Like, I mean, it sounds trite, but literally do what Jesus would do.
It's that simple. We have questions from the audience. As a church community, how do you balance civic engagement, involvement, without being political, taking sides, or influencing? Or should we be influencing?
We absolutely should be influencing. I mean, Ashford talked about earlier, the 501c3 status, we have let that scare us. Like, we need to speak truth to power now more than ever. And so the church should be at the forefront of that. And that's all I got to say about that.
So, and forgive me, it's late, so I can't, another Bible verse I can't remember, but I always reference Peter because I find different versions of Peter like myself, because Peter, again, wasn't a perfect man. Peter had his faults, but God saw something in Peter that he made Peter one of the first leaders of the modern church. And there was a parable or conversation where Jesus asked Peter to let me use your boat. Essentially, let me use your platform to get out what I am trying to get people to hear. And I think that's what I feel a sense of my role is here within the city. And I know that that is a sense of what we need to be doing as an overall church community, using our platforms to influence, to be a beacon of light, a beacon of hope for what needs to take place in the community. We have all of these platforms up here on a variety of levels. If we use them for God's purpose, for that supreme purpose, then we can actually affect the change that we need to see. It won't happen easy, because you all know as soon as we begin to do certain things in a positive light, the devil comes to stir up mess again. But if we're purpose-driven and we're driven by the scriptures and we pray those old time, like my grandmother, those old-timey prayers of not prosperity prayer, but Lord, bring a miracle to my family, keep us safe in this house, then I think we can see and affect that change that we want to see.
I also say absolutely take sides if you need to. One of the things that I'm fighting about all the time is that people say we need to be pro-business, but sometimes being pro-business in this city means that you're going against the people. So I take the side of being on the side of the people. So we have to wrap up. So real quickly, in the last 10 or 15 seconds, I'm going to start with you, Asher. Do you have any last words you want to leave?
I think we just need to get back to the basics of being communal with each other, get back to the basics of being in prayer with one another, get back to the basics of community and understanding how collective engagement, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa are what we should be following 365 days of the year. It spells out to us how we collectively impact and engage our communities. Add a faith twinge to that and we're good.
Charlene?
The root word of activism is to act. So find something that you